And we're live. Good morning, everyone. I'm T. Priest, the co-founder of Sober, and I want to thank you for joining our Facebook conversation this morning. For those of you who follow Sober, you know that our conversations don't only deal with our industry, but also to our culture, and things that are relevant to us as a community. And I think today's topic is going to be the perfect example of that. But before we get into today's discussion, I want to introduce our guest for this morning, Montoya Smith. Montoya is the founder of the Mental Dialogue Community Club. He's also a community advocate and a successful radio host. Good morning, Montoya.
Hey, what's up, King? Thanks for having me on this morning. How you doing?
I'm good, man. Go ahead and say what's up to the people and fill in any of the blanks that I may have missed in your intro there.
Nah, you covered it all. That's everything. Again, what's up, everybody? Glad to be on with Society of Black Agents for a much needed discussion. I do think it is the perfect kickoff. From what I understand, this is something that you're going to be doing on a regular basis. So glad to, in a sense, be your first guest. But yeah, you're absolutely right. I am the founder and curator, that's what I like to call myself, of the Mental Dialogue Community Club, which is basically we're trying to build a virtual neighborhood where African Americans learn to do business with each other. As I always say, we can be neighbors even though we don't live next to each other. And I've been fortunate enough to have as one of our key members and kind of in the inner circle of building the community club. I tapped you a few years ago. As I like to vet people that I bring to the club, and with your background, you've been one of those people that's been from your industry that I've ensured everybody in the club tries to get insurance. Everybody doesn't, but most people do, and you've been one of the people that's helped foster that relationship, as that is one of our 5 pillars for the Mental Dialogue Community Club, is that everybody have life insurance. There's a lot of levels to that. It's not as simple as having life insurance, and I have you coordinate with you with the club to ensure people learn about all the other aspects of life insurance. So thank you for that, T.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the reasons you're one of our first guests, because, and we're going to touch on this later, we have been able to effectively collaborate as 2 different organizations, and that's part of the conversation this morning. As you guys can see in the title, we're going to be talking about conflict and collaboration in the Black community. So again, that's why I wanted Montoya on. Not only has he studied and, in my estimation, is very schooled in this area of conversation that we're going to have this morning, but we've effectively been able to put into action what we talk about. So I definitely wanted to grab him to have this conversation. So let's go ahead and jump into it a little bit, Montoya. Obviously conflict isn't anything new in our community, right? It's not new, period. I mean, we've been having conflict since we've been walking on this planet. So
exactly,
we're just going to talk from our perspective this morning as a Black community. I mean, we've been having beef in our community since way back when. I mean, we've had Booker T and W.B. Du Bois. We've had Malcolm and Martin.
Right.
We beef over politics. It's something that, goes way back. So I'm a believer in, sometimes in order to understand where we are, we have to look back to where we come from. So talk to us a little bit about, the going back, some of the original conflicts and how we got into this space, if you will.
Absolutely. I'm absolutely a believer in it. The way that we learn history in our 12 years of primary education is pretty boring for most people, right? And so unless you just for whatever reason have a love for history, which I do, quite often most of society is not, unfortunately, informed on a lot of history, if you will. But Dr. Henry Clark, he always said it, that history, basically, you have to understand it to really navigate the future. And so if you think about what I just said, if a lot of us are not abreast of history, if you will, then we kind of move forward unknowingly.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so for that reason, not only do I love history, but I also advocate that we do exactly what you're talking about now, get a deeper understanding of history so that we can navigate better in the future. So like, for example, when you throughout those back and forth, whether it be Booker T. Washington, W. Du Bois, or even how we look at Martin and Malcolm in today's time, how we look at that or whatever. And obviously they had differences of opinion in different areas. But because we don't really study those differences, or in sometimes some situations there were even outside parties that played a role in that conflict. But if you don't know that and you don't study it, then we just kind of repeat that history, and we kind of put everything in an either or context. And unfortunately, dissertation in 2020 has been thrown in simply either or. So it's not even just in our community. It's kind of every dialogue that you see, whether it's within the Black community or outside the Black community. The reason that that's significant to pay attention to what's happening culturally is when, for those of us who study history, we see a distinct difference in how conflict, in a sense, was handled historically versus how it's handled now. For example, the most successful organizations typically navigate dissertation within themselves. They have a way of saying, okay, you have a difference of opinion. Let's explore that so we can now come up with the best answer.
Right.
So that's something that seemingly is now lost kind of to a certain extent within our society. I remember coming up, there was ideas of even like debate clubs and things of that nature. I have a legal studies background, so that's part of the reason that at least I think I have a structure of understanding, in a sense, how to put forth, if you will, an argument and have it go up against another well put together argument, right? And so that's the idea. Why do you think the way you think versus why do the way you think, and you take the best of it and dialogue it and then hash it out. Like that's where used to, in a sense, happen historically. And even our great minds, to a certain extent, when we start thinking about for example, the divide between a W. Du Bois or a Booker T, really, until they were outside entities saying, well, this is better for you, in a sense, for the African American community, or this is better, that discourse often wasn't vitriol initially. Now, you can look in the history, you kind of start seeing there seemed to be, for example, a real dislike eventually between a W. Du Bois and a Booker T. Washington. I think a lot of people have now, especially. So one benefit of social media is if you do start searching history, a lot of it is right there for you. Right. I had to do it when I had to go pick up the notes at the Dewey Decimal System Unit Library and find books and things of that nature. But I was an advocate reader, and sometimes I would spend more time with studying those books than doing my college lesson in college. But anyway, it's a little easier to pick it up. So now people are familiar with the idea that Martin and Malcolm, for example, actually were thinking along the similar lines before we, in a sense, lost them, if you will. While early in their careers, especially the 12 years that, for example, Malcolm was with Martin and kind of under the guidance of Elijah Muhammad, during that time, he went as far as to, call Martin Luther King Uncle Tom and things of that nature, which even then was a misusage, not to get too sidetracked. Yeah. Uncle Tom is an incorrect term. If you ever read Uncle Tom's Cabin, Uncle Tom was the hero. That's just a side note. If you never heard that, go look it up. But even still, so Malcolm went from some vitriol to, as he kind of got on his own and made some changes for himself. You can see, and you can even find it on the internet. Like I say, this is the cool part about the internet, is you can even find people have put together speeches near the end of their lives, and Malcolm and Martin sounded verbatim, if you will. Right. So I'm kind of pointing out people that I think people are familiar with, to say, without, in a sense, in my opinion, outside influence, you have that good discourse, and we lost due to Malcolm, losing Malcolm when we lost him, and losing Martin when we lost him. We lost what I think would have been a collaboration, and that would have been the model for what you and I are wanting to move into today, or that we often say we want to work together, or there's this comment that goes around in our community, which is not true, but let's talk about it. The idea of Black people can't work together, like that. Right. That was a comment I've heard most of my life. It still exists. I'm 46 now. I'm about to be 47, and I still hear the term. But I will tell you, after doing this work of the Mental Dialogue Community Club, working with you, and like you said, putting words to actions that we've been able to do in our collabos, I will tell you that is an untrue statement. And I'm not saying it from a romanticized standpoint, because a lot of times when people negate things that people have come to believe and come to understand about our community, when somebody goes against it, people's assumption is, oh, well, you're just saying that because you don't want to say something bad about our community.
Right. Right.
Well, what I've learned in studying history and what advanced my own personal study of history is when I started studying history outside of our own. Because as I mentioned in college, I became a voracious study of our own history due to when you realize that what you learn in primary school, you're not learning much about people that look like us.
Right.
So I went through a period where everything I was reading was just about us. It's like it was almost like a catch up, or like, damn, why did they keep this secret from me? Or damn, I never knew we had our own heroes. And Malcolm became my first hero during this. But really prior to that period, but Malcolm is my hero, became my hero. And I've read too many books on Malcolm, but I've read plenty of other books as well. But anyway, my knowledge base of history did not advance. And because I like history, I took a few extra history classes in college too. Again, that's not going to be about us. And so once I was able to read history from other perspectives and put it with the history, the deep history that I spent years studying of our own, I was able to put in context and realize this. And this is what makes me say that our ability to work together is there. And I've come to find out is no different, believe it or not, than other cultures. We'll dig into that in a second.
Mm-hmm.
The reason I say that it is no different because some people have heard, for example, W. Du Bois proposed the idea of the talented 10th. Mm-hmm. And you can go look into that and what that's talking about. But I'll just say a real general paraphrase of the talented 10th was he was just talking about, in a sense, the top 10th of a community, in a sense, leading the way in getting, in a sense, equity, justice, progress for the rest of the, in a sense, the community or the culture. It would be led by the talented 10th. Well, in studying other cultures, that's kind of how all groups advance.
Right.
All cultures have advanced with those who have gotten their, I'll throw this term out and most people know about it, Maslow's hierarchy of needs have been met, which is, food, shelter, and protection. Those are the bottom hierarchy things. Once those are met, then you can start getting into higher level thinking, where you want to go, ideas can be explored, and that society can progress. Well, typically, that's that top 10% who whatever's going on in that society, who have gotten their lower needs met. And so now they're able to explore and think about other things. And those visions and those dreams leads to eventually ideas. Because they said the way to for something to come to fruition, it has to take place first in the mind, second physically, right? And so those that are exploring come up with ideas that now we can historically look back on and say, wow, look at how that civilization advanced, or look at how that technology advanced, or how that progressed. Well, if you were to study who was actually involved, you will find out that the majority of that culture was still caught up in food, protection, and shelter. So it really was only a few that found a few others who believed in their idea and found a small circle that it made an advancement that ended up helping the rest of that culture or the rest of that race. So I'm breaking that down. Yes, please. I'm sorry. Go ahead, brother.
No, I was going to say, let me back up to something you said before I wrote down.
Okay.
You talked about outside influences, right? So that's always part of the conversation in our community. Again, romanticizing, not sure what is real when we look back to before we got here, before we stepped foot on this continent, how we were on the continent of Africa. But a lot of people say, since we got here, brainwashed, Willie Lynch, all that kind of stuff. Again, not to excuse what's going on today, but speak to that a little bit for people to say, you know what, it's not even our fault that we're in this predicament.
Right. So, here's the reality. As I said, studying all these other cultures, the one thing that, and what I'm about to say is very obvious, but sometimes it's not put into a proper context. Okay. So the one thing that is very different in studying all these other different cultures, and for example, people will make the idea that different cultures have been enslaved, or different races have been enslaved at different times around the world. And that is absolutely true. A lot of different forms of slavery around the world, some even more brutal than what we think of, unfortunately. But the one thing that is unique about the African-American experience specifically was the transatlantic slave trade. Was the one type of enslavement that actually basically moved people from their place where they were, in a sense, born, the nation they were born in, to an entire another land that, no matter, for the most part, they were never going to return to.
Right.
So that distinctive type of enslavement there was a process for that to happen. Okay, and I'll simplify it. So a lot of people may not understand, but the reason the enslavement trade took place was simply for greed. It wasn't an idea that we were inferior to another man or anything of that nature.
Right.
That narrative was driven, in fact, for the greed, for the money. And it was just basically, in a sense, the Europeans who, just to put this in context, because of where their geography was in the world, and this would have happened with any group, but because of where, in a sense, they settled in that part of Europe where all the countries are surrounded by water, it makes sense that historically that group would become the best seafarers in the world. It's almost like, giving a quick example here in the Northern America, like if you go out to the Southwest, how the Navajo could build their homes on the side of mountains.
Mm-hmm.
If culturally, if you grow up in other parts of the world, and you don't learn that skill. Humans naturally can come up with any skill that's necessary based on where they live. So in a sense, I just give that part of the context. So yes, when they were traveling to the Americas and quote unquote discovering America, if we will, we know that to be BS now. But in that process of having to navigate and conquer a land in which they were not the majority, they initially tried to enslave the Native Americans. Due to the Native Americans and Europeans having less interaction, it was hard for them to do it, because not only were they, in a sense, killing them to take over their land, but even the ones they tried to enslave would get sick, and because they had never had interaction, they would die off. Right. And so, in the same time, traveling to the Americas and traveling to the unfortunately the African continent or whatever, a lot of the tribes would trade their prisoners of wars and their own inner battles for guns and for items, and those prisoners of wars within those tribes would be brought to the Americas. So a lot of times people will say, why do Africans sell Africans, and don't realize that just like Ecuadorian, doesn't have a relationship with somebody from Brazil. They're both in a sense, or maybe have a Hispanic backgrounds, but they don't know each other. If Brazil takes over Ecuador, they don't look at Ecuadorians as their brothers. So a lot of times people don't understand the distinction. So just like I said, I like to give context when I'm explaining things. So anyway, long story short, I'm sorry, go ahead, my bad.
No, I want to transition a little bit.
Okay, my bad.
To talk about how the division and conflict has cost us as a people, right?
Yeah.
So, quote, Shay says she's trying to listen but can't hear for some reason. Hopefully. If anybody else is having that issue, let us know, please. We're coming through clear to each other, but I don't know if it's coming through to you. I hope it is, because I see people on the stream. So Shay's the first person that said something, but let us know, please. There's a quote I love from Malcolm X says, a person or group cannot be acceptable to each other cannot be acceptable to others until they're acceptable to themselves. Okay, she's back on. Okay. So, in that quote, I believe that, division has caused us to lose some of our ability to work together and progress as a collaboration, as a people, a collective, right? So correct me on the numbers, because I know you're good at the numbers. We only represent about 13% of the population.
That's correct.
So if we continue to divide and segment, it reduces our ability to effectively progress as a collective or as a people. So can you talk about how some of this division has caused us not to be able to progress and get to where we're trying to get as a people?
No, absolutely. And so with all the things I was breaking down, here's the one thing that came out of the transatlantic slave trade that we have to understand most about history, which is the historical distrust. That's the one thing that is still a remnants of that 400 we were enslaved 246 years, another 50 years of, Jim Crow, and then the civil rights movement hits or whatever. So whatever that math adds up to. But the one thing that has definitely stayed with us is the historical distrust. And that's, I want to go back to what you asked initially. That's where the outside influence became. So when, where it was all a money grab for the elite to pick blacks against whites, and they were putting us against, whites didn't even exist in that manner until the transatlantic slave trade. The elite just said, hey, we don't want them coming together. So race as a social construct is actually made up all for the elite to get their money. But in doing so, the part of that divide was also to ensure that we trusted, quote unquote, our masters in a sense more than we trusted ourselves. So that distrust has remained with us. That's what's key to how it's divided us. The part about when I say the top 10% or tribes advancing us, one thing that we do lose sight on is we do have this romanticized concept that for the most part, that the 13% should come together. And that's part of romanticize. And the reason we romanticize it that way is because of that struggle here on this land. So a lot of us relate to that struggle. And so we end up battling over this idea that we should all come together. What ends up happening is when I study other cultures, it's the groups that say, hey, we're on the same page. We're able to have disagreeable discourse, but still advance. Malcolm, another quote by Malcolm, which is my favorite quote, which is he always said, do not confuse the objective with the method. We get caught up in the methodology and never keep our eyes on the objective. When people have heard that quote from Malcolm, says, they don't kill us because we're Muslim. They don't kill us because they're Christians. They kill us because we're black. So that's him keeping in line with the concept of don't confuse the method with the objective. So in coming together, it doesn't have to be our entire group. I've watched groups stagnate because we're tied up in the methodology saying, well, it should be done this way or it should be done this way. And then the groups give up because they feel like there's not enough blacks coming together and it stalls out at the conversation. The reality is, if we start realizing the Jews, quote unquote, don't come together better than us. The Chinese don't come together better than us. It's small groups, and we highlight those that are advanced to say, look at how all of them come together.
Right.
Come to realize what actually happened. It was a small, unique group that wasn't dependent on their other people in their culture and came together. So that's what makes me say, I know we can come together. The $1 Community Club has done it. You and I have done it. So if we lose sight of this romanticized idea that 13% needs to come together, however, when we hold on to that, it stagnates even smaller groups coming together. Right. Because we hang on to say everybody's not with us, so then nothing happens.
Right. That makes sense. No group is 100% together. Right. There's division in every community, like we talked about at the beginning. I just think for us, sometimes when we look at how small our numbers are in comparison to some other communities, right. That's where the concern comes from. Because I think you touched on it really good, is a lot of times we highlight the successes of other communities. But when it comes to our community, a lot of times the negative is highlighted or focused or spotlighted too often. So when you start breaking down the numbers and all you see is negativity in our community, that's cause for concern for a lot of people saying we're not doing anything. But like you said, we are. We just need to have more examples of that. Hey, good morning, Tamika. I saw you in the chat here. We need to get you on this conversation too. I'd love to have you join us in the future. But so again, let's talk about, we're always solution based, right? And I apologize for my lighting, guys. I thought my lighting was better, but now I'm seeing I'm kind of dark here. So, apologize for that. Right now we're dealing with, the term cancel culture, right? It's like we can't agree to disagree anymore. If we don't agree, it's just we're done with you. We saw this recently, and you and I touched on this a little bit with Ice Cube. You got this whole divide between, where people fall, whether they're for him or against him. And there's no dialogue or conversation to take out the good pieces. It's just like throw him away. You know what I'm saying? And we're seeing that more and more. We're seeing that with the elections. Where you're a Democrat, where you're a Republican. If you're Democrat, you're stupid. The Democrats have taken advantage of it since X. If you're a Republican, you're stupid. Donald Trump is right. So, I mean, we have all of these, back and forth, but there never seems to be really the conversation about how we can agree just to disagree.
Yeah, I would love. Yeah, I love to jump in.
My kids, my two youngest, they have little sibling squabbles every now, and I'm good with that. I'm like, as long as you don't make it personal,
right?
where, you know, you can't come back later and say, hey, we still good. I don't have an issue with that, but it seems like we're not doing that anymore. And again, I don't want to be so broad in saying we, but
Right.
again, that's what's being spotlighted. There's so much, just get rid of that person, just cancel that person. We don't want to deal with that person. Speak to that a little bit, Montoya.
Absolutely. So for all the wonders of technology, Simon Simonette talks about technology has literally, they're able to study this, has turned us into having shorter attention spans, especially in societies that have, you know, access to phones, to get on the internet and things of that nature. So the cancel culture, just, you got to know where it's coming from. And once you know this, you should be aware of it. So what happens with that phone, it has a lot of influence to create some of what we're seeing. And so what you talked about was civil discourse, that's what's missing. And so I did a video on the Ice Cube situation. And so what should be able to happen, and this is what you're asking for, what should be able to happen is you should be able to disagree with Ice Cube's strategy if you choose. And it should not include throwing Ice Cube away, especially when he has a history of decent intentions.
Right.
Even if you consider it to be absolutely not a smart move, you should be able to say, I think it's not a smart move, but don't let this attention span soundbite meme society allow you to jump on board with, I disagree with his move, even if you call it dumb, to say, I dismiss that man. You know, and the reason it happens is because of sound bites. I saw people as going as far as, well, how did he jump out there on his own? Who do he think he is? We're letting celebrities move us and tell us what to do, and you know, or how does he even think he can speak for us, or why do we let celebrities speak to us? Then when I dug into it before I did the video, find out he's being advised by Dr. Claude Anderson.
Exactly.
He had a session with Andrew Young. Everybody knows him or whatever, prior to making those moves. And then in him making the move, he ended up linking up with, for example, Yvette Cornell and Antonio Moore. And regardless of how you feel about them, Ice Cube is the example of what discourse should lead to. So again, it's not about, obviously I had no problem with what Ice Cube said. I'll make that clear. So I'm not caping for Ice Cube. I'm talking about how you could disagree and still say, if we go back to Malcolm's quote, do not confuse the objective with the method, then there's like, even I saw Ice Cube on a broadcast with the ladies who were upset that he had not included, in a sense, African-American women or black women in his contract with Black America. Ice Cube says, you're right, I made a big mistake. Ladies, help me with this.
Right.
In a couple of scenarios, the ladies stayed in a vitriol place to say, well, you just kept going where you forgot us, without overlooking that him saying, I want an entire section for ideas particular to your women. So he's admitting, I made the mistake, now help me. That's where civil discourse should take you. Let's take out what's good. Don't throw out the whole baby with the bathwater. Just, you know what I'm saying? Throw the water out, keep the baby. Let's raise this baby. And that's what we've been able to do together, working together. Perfect example, the Men of Dialogue Community Club Connections event we do viral. A couple of weeks ago, or it was actually about 6 weeks ago, I think, we had a discussion about the ATL Water Boys here in Atlanta. We just did a dialogue. We dialogued and then we did our business. Well, out of that dialogue, was it just this past weekend, T? Yeah. You were teaching the boys how to make T-shirts so they can get off the corner from selling waters. That came from just a dialogue on a viral conversation that we did a discussion that we didn't have a plan of action, didn't think of one, and now here we are acting together, collaborating, because Black people do come together. The example I love to use is the sister up in Nashville that opened up a beauty store, and she did $50,000 on the first day. Don't tell me we can't come together, because we highlight when other groups come together. As you said, our historical distrust makes us focus on the negative trauma, and we just look at the negative things, and we now tell the next generation, Black people don't work together, and overlook all the examples that are, the sister up in Nashville or the Village Market, which is what I highlight here in Atlanta, where, she has 60 to 80 vendors of just us when she does that every quarter here in Atlanta. And I'm gonna go there and I'm like, don't tell me black people don't come together. You can't tell me that if a mall, that we said we love the mall, right? But if a mall said we're gonna charge you $10 before you come in that mall, you guess who ain't gonna be there? Black people. But we want to support when we know black people are coming together at the village market. We want to support so bad, we'll pay before we go in there and buy something. Like, don't tell me we don't come together when we got real live examples of us coming together and progressing. And whenever you see progress that we highlight on social media, you best believe there was a group of black people behind that progress.
Yeah, and we're gonna touch on that a little bit more in a second. But I want to go back to what you said about the conversation that started about the water boys on your last your last Zoom, your last event. So I think our circle, our network plays a large part on where we fall in certain conversations, right? Because even on that call, if you can think back, part of the conversation started off kind of negative about the boys.
True.
You know, people were tired of seeing them running out to the street. People were tired of seeing the trash they were leaving on the corners. But because the collective overall was supportive of what the boys were doing, something positive came out of it, versus if that was a negative environment, it would have been easy just to beat that situation down and again cancel the water boys.
Yep.
It doesn't fit into the narrative of how we think it should look.
Well, let's dig deeper in that real quick. I know we don't want to keep these too long, but let me dig into that real quick, because what you said, what you said, let's talk about how it actually happened. Like you said, you're right. That conversation was definitely, what if one gets hit? Unfortunately, one did get hit not too long after that. They're rude, all these type of things. And so for those of us who have been fortunate enough to work with, hey, let's shout them out, helping empower youth, Mark Boyd and Casey Venice, who run kind of, involved with the boys. Because of their involvement, we were like, hold on. Here's what we're trying to do to get the boys better. And so as we had that dialogue, more people say, hey, well, we want to help with that initiative because that's going to help the boys. And then here's the reality of how the initiative took place. Everybody was on board for the dialogue. And then on Saturday, it ended up being the dedicated few.
Right.
And so that's part of the unfortunate reality to conflict and collabo. So I'm almost in a lot of nuance here. So for once, on one hand, we have to get rid of the romanticized idea that it needs to be, 90% of the community that comes together to make something happen. Like, let's get rid of that romanticized idea. But the reality to making it happen is it ends up only being the dedicated few. So I will encourage we do need to add on to the dedicated few, because the dedicated few do get stretched beyond our collaborations being as much as they should be, because those that we admire, they always end up telling you they have a dedicated team who are willing to sacrifice some of their time or some of their money outside of their own things to make something go forward. So unfortunately, here is a reality, but this is not a black thing, but we think it is because of our historical distrust. So unfortunately, you will have a lot of people who say they're going to do something and not do it. It can beat you up even though you're dedicated to it, because it would have been a lot easier had we worked in synergy, had we collaborated. So there is something that it also gets lost in the social media age. Your word doesn't mean as much, because on social media, you experience real life emotions, but if everything on social media is fleeting. And so now we have a fleeting society where it is, in my opinion, has crept even into our generation. So unfortunately, our youth are being raised in a society where things are fleeting. Simon Simonet talked about this. And so they don't have they make friendships, but not ones in which they can depend on each other. Unfortunately, because we're now becoming addicted to social media, even our generation and older, we're starting to see that, whereas your word meant something. So ultimately, we can stop saying we as blacks don't come together, but you individually must hold yourself accountable. If you say you're going to be part of a small tribe or a small group that's going to do something, then that can advance us much further than what happens now, which is the assumption that we don't work together, or you keeping your word when you say you're going to dedicate to a small group. Both of those things have to happen, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no. And then, I wanted to, you touched on this already, but I want to transition into examples of what can happen when we do collab, when we do come together, when we do work together. And, going back to the situation from your last Zoom call, when we did have the conversation about the Water Boys, you did share that because of that conversation, somebody did approach you and say, they wanted to give a large sum of money. So again, you know, as you stated before, it can be done. And not only can it be done, it is being done.
Being done.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So talk some more examples that you
no,
know.
absolutely. No, that's a perfect example. So yeah, as myself and T are moving further, I showed some of the videos on the Mental Dialogue Facebook page and on the IG page of us helping the boys. Well, while we're moving along, there's another member who just got wind of it later than all of us. We already been moving forward. Now he's putting together a project to raise $5,000 to $8,000 for the boys, and that's just because, again, don't tell me we don't work together. You and I are already working together, and some other, and some others within the the club and sober are working together for the boys. But we got a whole nother entity that's wanting to join in. And how does that happen? Because we're already moving the needle. The idea of if you help yourself, others will help you. And so, that's an example. I do the radio show, so I'm always bringing on examples of opportunities because what happens is you have to connect to the opportunity that resonates most for you. Another mistake that we make sometimes with romanticizing coming together is sometimes we do not respect that everybody coming together can be outside of somebody's capacity. So I do challenge people because we are that 13% and we do need to come together as best we can. Find that one thing outside of yourself that you're committed to. And stay committed to it. Keep your word, whether it be money or time, because in doing so, you can advance things like the sister that did the community fridge, free 99 fridge. They've put up like 7 fridges around the community where those who are in food deserts can go get fresh food for free. That's the collaborated that, and Shadon Reynolds, one of our members, she's really behind the sister that put together the free 99 fridge. That's another example. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was about to say that there's another one from your radio show 2 weeks ago with the young brother that opened the hot dog.
Oh yeah, Mason. Oh, perfect example. Matter of fact, I know you don't want to do these long. This might be the best closeout example of them all.
Go ahead.
Mason Wright. I just had him on the show 2 weeks ago. Mason Wright. He's 14 years old. Yeah. He's the youngest entrepreneur in the state of Georgia. And everybody's jumped on it. The Mental Dialogue Community Club, Shelly Winters had him on this show. I've seen him on a bunch of shows, all because another guy we had on the show, Jay Bailey, who's the CEO and president of the Herman Russell Center here in Atlanta. He said, "Hey, here's my mentor starting this thing." He just put that on social media. We've all jumped on it, and the brother has been putting out thank yous, and I'm sorry for selling out today. We'll be ready for you tomorrow. Don't tell me we don't come together. I was in the line for an hour and a half the first day of the grand opening, and the lines are still there. Don't tell me we don't come together. But what happens is we come together, typically for those that are in business, when the right amount of money is spent or the marketing is in place. Now, that's something that as we learn and how to move in business, that's an area where sometimes there's a learning curve, in my opinion, where sometimes we get into these back and forths about how well we support our businesses or don't support our businesses. That's a two-way street. But the assumption that we don't support our business is not a fair one because it's used out of the historical distrust perspective. And somebody will be in business and they say, well, they won't pay my price for it. Well, typically when I look behind, if I'm able to consult with their business, it's typically how they're marketing. And a lot of times we don't recognize that other cultures that we say we spend our money on. I use the perfect example I always use is most people don't know Nike has a $1.5 billion marketing budget.
Right.
1.5 each year. That's the marketing budget. So I just throw that out there because we get mad in a sense when our communities lining up for Jordans or the next Nikes and things of that nature, not realizing marketing works in this country for all cultures. Mm-hmm. All cultures spend their money. And this is my man Hazi Ali always says, United States of America stands for United States of Advertising. All cultures are falling for the advertising, and let's best believe 1.5 billion by Nike. A lot of it targets our community. So I don't get mad because some people choose to get in that line, because I see people in Mason Wright's line when he's marketed right too. Exactly. So that's the fair comparison. When we don't see us being supported, there's usually something behind it that we're not admitting to or looking into, and we just throw it in this one lump sum, and then we tell our children, the next generation, we don't support each other. So here they are learning something that's not factual, that all cultures with the right business marketing and things of that nature will support if everything's done correctly. We just got to build to that. The reality for us in this culture, because of that 450 year, in a sense, head start that everybody else has had, some of the things that we're doing, we're just now coming into our first generation of entrepreneurs. Mason Wright is a second generation entrepreneur in his family.
Yeah. So, hey, I see another in the box here from Shay. Says it would be great to expand this conversation regarding how to collaborate and the differences between collab, co-op, and partnership. So it sounds like we're probably going to have a part 2 to this conversation. Shay would definitely love to have you on. Let's try to get something on, because we're trying to keep these conversations to about 30 to 45 minutes. So we're at about 40 right now. So I want to wrap up. And, I wanted to wrap up with some examples of how we are. But I think Shay made a good point. Let's talk about how we get to that point as well, and some of the differences between, collaborations, co-ops, partnerships, and things like that. So again, I think we're just gearing up for a part 2, because that's what Sober's about. We want to have these conversations about collaboration, because, even in our industry, there's been division. Anybody that's in this industry knows it's dominated by middle-aged white men. So although, minorities are starting to come up in the insurance industry, it's like we all started at the bottom, and we're all clawing our way to the top. And in my personal experience, I've even come across, other Black agents and agency owners that weren't about collaboration. They were just about holding on to the little pieces they built. And I respect that. I understand that. But again, imagine if we can collaborate, what we can do in our industry, right? For those of you who sell, that when we deal with the carriers, we're dealing with them as individuals, or most of us small agencies. So they're not going to move. We don't move the needle for them too much. But if we can collaborate and get, 500 or 1,000 agents together and go to these carriers and say, this is what we want from you to benefit our community, we have a lot more leverage than me going as the president of Core Financial or the co-founder of Sober until we get our numbers up. So the collaboration affects our industry as well. So one thing I want to do at the end, Montoya, is you as an outsider, we have all these conversations about, insurance in our community, how people, you talked about the distrust. Tamika said there are 490,000 Black. Okay, good number. 490,000 Black agents.
Nice.
490,000. Montoya, from the outside looking in, we talk about insurance sometimes and how you met us before we did the collaboration. Just speak a little bit about what you would like to see us as agents and agency owners do in reference to collaboration.
Absolutely. The example you just gave is if agents would come together to go to the carriers. That's exactly how to a certain extent the agent community, in a sense, dominates the hair industry, which is a $9 billion industry or whatever. And so again, while I highlight the sister, I wish I knew the name of her store. And there's one in Georgia here that's doing well as well. The sister that has a Black beauty supply, because in a sense, well, however you feel about the hair industry or whatever, what sisters should or should not do. I always say as Black men, we should leave that alone. Let our sisters do whatever the hell they want. Right. But with that said, for those brothers and sisters who are having success in that industry, they're competing with other groups who are co-opting and getting all the supplies at a much cheaper price. So people complain about, maybe they complain about the price in the Black store, not realizing that they're competing with co-ops. And so that's the perfect example of what I would love to see happen with the insurance agents, in the sense that Collabo could create that. If it's 490,000, I would love to see you, find 50 to 100, because that alone would make a dent, because now you look like the corporation. So even if they don't give you the exact price that they give, one of these large box companies or whatever, 100 of you coming together would get a better price than y'all working in your independent world, and also realize that this culture, American individualism, has been perfect for, in a sense, the majority culture. So I get how agents, because that's what this culture teaches. So I get how they can kind of get in their silos and try to, keep their little cycle, because it wasn't hard. It wasn't easy to keep it. So I get how that happens. But again, if you understand that distrust was put into us, then obviously The solution is to go against what, once you understand that history, then the solution is to go against that. And just Mr. Jim Klingman always said this. This seems so simple and it's so true and it's worked for me. He says, how do you trust someone? You know, how do you trust someone? And he always says, you just trust them. And you will be shocked how that plays out. Mr. Jim Klingman, I've seen him send his book for free to people, and they end up paying.
Right.
I've created relationships where somebody, based on how they knew, I didn't know it was going to happen. We were at an event, and the way things was moving, he didn't have the credit card thing. He gave it to me. I shot him the cash out, 15 minutes later. But he didn't know if he was going to see me again at that. It was a big event. He didn't know if he was going to see me again. And that's the collaboration that culturally a lot of groups have. When we say we don't have it, there's a history for why we don't have it. We can build a culture and trust each other. Agents should try it, but if you're the one that's in the group that gets selfish, you will break it down. You will be the one that break it down.
Yeah. So hey, we're right at 45 minutes. Again, Montoya, appreciate you joining me today. Thank you for everybody that's been in the chat. I want you guys to stay tuned because, like I said, it sounds like there's going to be a part 2 to this conversation because it sounds like some of y'all want to get in on it as well. So we're definitely going to set that up. The goal is to start trying to do these lives once a week. So, this is the first one. If you have some topics you want us to discuss, or if you want to, come on with us, feel free to reach out to me. We're definitely open to that. But with that being said, again, Montoya, thank you. Appreciate all your insight today.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Tamika. I see that there. Hey guys, have a wonderful day, and we will check in with y'all soon. All right.
Hey, real quick, if I could throw this out, if anybody, we started an event called Community Checkup with the Arts and Culture Show Sincere, where it's basically a mental health checkup. We do it once a month, so we got that Thursday. If you know anybody that's going through it, or even if you're the friend that's helping somebody that's going through it, talking to your best friend or taking to your great friends is not therapy. So we give everybody access to a mental health professional. We have Dr. Parker J. Griffin, coming on Thursday. So just follow us on Facebook at Mental Dialogue or on IG at Mental_Dialogue and go to the link in the bio. So follow me there and you can get access to that on Thursday. And Saturday, we also have a Clip Notes event where we discuss books. We're discussing Ta-Nehisi Coates, Between the World and Me. Those are great dialogues. Even if you haven't read the book, we read the passages, then you can participate. So you don't have to have read the book. A lot of people go buy the book after our dialogue, but just follow us to get to those. Thank you so much, T, for having me on today.
Not a problem. All right, y'all. Have a good one.
All I ask is that you think.
Peace.